I remember the exact moment my marriage stopped feeling real. I was standing outside a small wine bar on East Bay Street, my hand resting on the cold metal handle, when I saw him. Daniel, my husband. He was leaning across the table, his hand cupping another woman's cheek like it belonged there. And then he kissed her. Slow, certain. Like this wasn't new. Like this was something practiced. Familiar. Comfortable. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then my phone vibrated. I looked down. A message from him lit up the screen. I love you. For a second, everything blurred together. The reflection in the glass showed his lips still on hers. My own face frozen in place. And those 3 words glowing in my hand like some kind of cruel joke. I could have walked in. I could have shattered the moment. Demanded answers. Made sure everyone in that room knew exactly who he was. Instead, I smiled. Because what Daniel didn't know was that this wasn't the moment I found out. This was just the moment I decided to let him lose everything. And the truth. It had started long before that kiss. I stayed there longer than I should have, watching details I would have ignored before. The way he leaned in first. Not her. The way she didn't hesitate. The way his phone sat face down on the table between them. That detail stayed with me. Daniel never put his phone face down. Not with me. Never. A couple brushed past me on the sidewalk, laughing like the world was still simple. I stepped aside, still staring through the glass, feeling like I was watching someone else's life instead of my own. I told myself to walk away. So I did. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just quiet. The door never opened. The bell above it never rang. And inside, Daniel never even looked up. By the time I reached my car, my hands weren't shaking anymore. That surprised me. I thought I would feel something louder. Anger. Grief. Rage. But what settled in instead was something colder. Clearer. Because that image of him kissing her didn't feel like a shock. It felt like confirmation. Like the last piece of something I had been trying not to see finally sliding into place. 3 weeks earlier, I woke up at 2:17 in the morning to the faint glow of Daniel's phone lighting up our bedroom. That alone wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that he didn't check it. He reached over, turned it face down, and pulled the blanket higher, like he was hiding it even in his sleep. That was the first moment something didn't sit right. Or maybe it was just the first moment I allowed myself to notice. After that night, small things started to stand out. The kind of things that don't scream betrayal, but whisper it. Daniel used to come home at the same time every evening. 6:30. Sometimes a little later, but always predictable. Then it became 7. Then 8. Then texts that said, "Don't wait up." At first, I told myself it made sense. The company was growing. His responsibilities were changing. I wanted to believe that. One night, I made dinner anyway. Set the table for 2. His favorite meal. I sat there longer than I should have, listening to the quiet hum of the house, glancing at the clock every few minutes. 9:15. 10. By the time I packed everything away, the food had gone cold. When he finally walked in close to 11, he kissed my cheek like nothing was wrong. "Long day," he said, and I nodded. Like that explained everything. Like it always had. But something about it didn't land the same way anymore. A few days later, I walked into the kitchen while he was on his phone. He turned the screen away so quickly it almost felt automatic. I laughed, trying to keep it light. Secret life I should know about. He smiled. Too fast. Just work. Just work. That answer used to be enough. But this time, it lingered. 2 days after that, we were sitting at dinner when it happened. He reached across the table, barely looking up, and said, "Lauren, can you pass the..." He stopped mid-sentence. I froze. He laughed it off, shaking his head. "I'm exhausted. Long day." Lauren? I had never heard that name in our house before. I didn't ask. Not then. Standing in that parking lot outside the wine bar, I finally understood why. Because some part of me already knew the answer. And answers make things real. I sat in my car for a long time. My phone still in my hand. The message still glowing faintly on the screen. I love you. I looked at those words one more time. Then I locked the screen and set the phone down. Because in that moment, something inside me shifted. I wasn't wondering anymore. I wasn't hoping I was wrong. I wasn't trying to explain it away. I was done guessing. And for the first time since all of this began, I started thinking about what I was going to do next. 3 weeks before I stood outside that wine bar, I was still trying to convince myself nothing was wrong. That's the thing about trust. It doesn't disappear all at once. It fades in small, quiet ways that are easy to ignore if you want to. And for a while, I did. I told myself Daniel was just busy. The company was expanding. His schedule was heavier. His responsibilities were growing. That made sense. It felt safe. But there was something underneath all of it that didn't sit right. No matter how many times I tried to explain it away. It started with his hours. Daniel used to come home at the same time every evening. It wasn't something we talked about. It was just part of our rhythm. A quiet consistency that made everything feel steady. Then it changed. 7 instead of 6:30. Then 8. Then nights where I wouldn't hear from him at all until a short message appeared on my phone. Running late. Don't wait up. The words got shorter. Colder. Less like communication and more like obligation. One night, I set the table anyway. 2 plates. His favorite meal. The one he used to thank me for before even taking the first bite. I sat there longer than I should have, listening to the silence stretch across the house. 9:15. Then, by the time I packed everything away, the food had gone cold. When he finally walked in close to 11, he didn't apologize. He kissed my cheek like it was routine. Long day, he said. I nodded. Like that was enough. Like it always had been. But something about it didn't feel the same anymore. A few days later, I realized something else. He had stopped asking about me. That sounds small. But after 7 years of marriage, it isn't. Daniel used to sit across from me, loosen his tie, and say, "Tell me everything. Even the boring parts, especially the boring parts." Now, he sat with his phone in his hand, scrolling while I talked, nodding at the wrong moments, responding with, "That's nice," when I hadn't said anything that matched it. It was like talking to someone who was physically there, but already somewhere else. And slowly, without even noticing when it started, I began to talk less, to share less, because something inside me understood what my mind didn't want to admit. He wasn't really listening anymore. Daniel's family had always been a world of their own. The Carters didn't just have money. They had history, influence, the kind of presence that filled a room before anyone even spoke. His mother, Patricia, held everything together with quiet control. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. People listened anyway. I had never quite fit into that world. I was included. Technically, invited, acknowledged, but never fully accepted. At family dinners, conversations about the company would move around me like I wasn't part of them. Decisions were discussed without explanation. Plans were made without my input. Once, early in our marriage, I asked Daniel why. Why don't they ever include me? He had smiled, brushing it off. That's just how they are. Don't take it personally. I tried not to, but it always felt personal. And recently, it felt different. More deliberate. 2 weeks before everything unraveled, Patricia invited us to Sunday dinner. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual and was when she greeted me. Her smile lingered a second too long. Her hand rested lightly on my arm, almost as if she was trying to reassure me of something I hadn't asked about. "Evelyn, you look lovely," she said. Her voice was warm. Too warm. I thanked her, forcing a smile of my own. But then I saw it. A glance. Quick. Subtle. Shared between her and Daniel. It passed in a second, but it carried something I couldn't ignore. A quiet understanding. Like a conversation had already happened, and I wasn't part of it. That was the moment something shifted. Not enough to confront. Not enough to accuse. But enough to feel it. The space between us growing wider. After that night, his phone became impossible to ignore. Daniel had never been secretive before. We didn't have rules about privacy because we never needed them. But suddenly, his phone was always in his hand. Always within reach. Always turned slightly away from me. One afternoon, he left it on the kitchen counter while he stepped into the garage. It lit up. Just for a second. A name appeared on the screen. Lauren. My chest tightened before I could stop it. Not because I knew who she was, but because I didn't. And somehow, that felt worse. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't unlock it. I just stood there, staring at the screen until it went dark again. Like the moment had never happened. When Daniel came back inside, he picked it up immediately. Checked it. Typed something quickly. Then looked at me. "Everything okay?" he asked. For a second, I wondered if he could see it. The question forming. The doubt settling in. But I smiled. Of course. That night, I heard the name again. Lauren. Soft. Barely there. Spoken in his sleep. And this time, I didn't explain it away. Lying there in the dark. Staring at the ceiling. I felt it clearly for the first time. This wasn't just stress. This wasn't just distance. This was something else. Something hidden. Something growing quietly while I kept pretending everything was fine. I turned my head and looked at him. He looked peaceful. Unaffected. Like nothing had changed. But something had... I could feel it. Not fully. Not clearly. But enough to understand one thing. If I wanted the truth, I wasn't going to get it by asking. The moment you stop asking questions out loud is the moment you start asking them silently. And silent questions don't wait for answers. They go looking for them. That morning, I didn't confront Daniel. I didn't mention the name Lauren. I didn't bring up the late nights or the way his phone never left his hand anymore. I poured coffee. Sat across from him like I always did. And watched. Really watched. His eyes stayed on his screen longer than usual. His thumb moved quickly. Like he was finishing something before I could notice. "Big day?" I asked. He didn't look up right away. "Yeah. Meetings all morning." Meetings. That word again. It had become his answer for everything. And for the first time, I didn't accept it. I noted it. Stored it. Because something inside me had shifted. I wasn't trying to understand him anymore. I was trying to understand the truth. After he left, I didn't clean the kitchen. I didn't turn on the television or distract myself with anything familiar. I went straight to the one place I had avoided until now. The finances. Marriage isn't just built on love. It's built on trust. Shared decisions. Transparency. And if that trust was breaking, I needed to see where... I opened my laptop. Logged into our joint account. At first, everything looked normal. Bills paid on time. Groceries. Utilities. The quiet rhythm of a shared life. Then I saw it. A transfer. Small enough to overlook. Large enough to question. No clear label. Just a string of numbers tied to an account I didn't recognize. I stared at it longer than I should have. Then I scrolled. And found another one. Same amount. Same destination. A few days apart. Then another. Carefully spaced. Deliberate. That's when I felt it. This wasn't random. This was planned. My heart didn't race. It didn't need to. Because something deeper had already accepted what this meant. This wasn't just about cheating. This was about intention. I clicked into the details of the account. Most of it was protected. Limited access. But there was enough to tell me one thing. This wasn't personal. It was tied to a business entity. That didn't make sense. Daniel had never mentioned anything outside the company. No side investments. No new ventures. And yet money was moving. Quietly. Regularly. Without a word. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, trying to decide what unsettled me more, the secrecy or the possibility that this was something bigger than I had imagined. The Carter business had always been tightly controlled. Everything documented. Everything approved. Nothing moved without Patricia knowing. At least, that's what I had always believed. But if Daniel was moving money like this, either he had permission, or he didn't. And neither possibility felt safe. Because if his family was involved, then this wasn't just betrayal, it was strategy. And if they weren't, then Daniel was risking everything. For what? For her, I shouldn't have checked his email. But I did. Not by guessing passwords. Not by breaking in. Just by remembering. Daniel had logged into his account on my laptop weeks ago, and never logged out. I opened the browser. There it was. His inbox. Clean. Too clean. Almost empty in a way that didn't feel natural. But not completely. There was a folder tucked away at the side. Archived. The kind of place people move things they don't want to see every day, but aren't ready to delete. I clicked it. Scrolled slowly. And then I saw her name. Lauren Hayes. It didn't shock me. Not anymore. But seeing it written there made everything solid. Real. There were dozens of emails. Not romantic. Not obvious. At least not on the surface. Subject lines about agreements. Financial projections. Legal language that looked professional. Structured. Safe. But the tone underneath it. That was different. Familiar. Too familiar. Like two people who understood each other beyond what the word said. One email stood out. Short. Direct. From Daniel. We'll finalize it before she has any idea. I read it again. Slower. Before she... Not if... Before... My chest tightened. But not from surprise. From clarity. There was only one person in his life who didn't know what he was doing. Meh. I closed the laptop slowly. The screen going dark until all I could see was my own reflection staring back at me. For a moment, I didn't recognize her. She looked calm. Too calm. Like someone standing outside her own life. Watching it unfold without reacting. This wasn't just an affair. Affairs are emotional. Messy. Impulsive. This was something else. Structured. Carefully built. Layered. And I was the only one left out of it. That night, I didn't confront him. I didn't ask questions. I didn't give him the chance to lie. I made dinner. Asked about his day. Listened as he repeated the same answers. Meetings. Work. Nothing unusual. And I smiled when I was supposed to. Because now, I wasn't searching for the truth anymore. I was collecting it. Piece by piece. Until it was complete enough. That no one could deny it. Not even him. By the time you see the other woman, it's already too late to believe she's the real problem. That's what I realized the morning after I read those emails. Lauren Hayes wasn't a mystery anymore. She was a name. A pattern. A presence threaded through everything Daniel was hiding. And somehow, that made it worse. Because if this had just been an affair, I would have known how to feel. Anger would have come easily. So would heartbreak. But this was something colder. More deliberate. Lauren wasn't the reason my marriage was breaking. She was part of whatever Daniel was building behind my back. I didn't plan to follow him. I didn't see myself as that kind of woman. The one who tracks, who watches, who waits outside restaurants just to confirm what she already suspects. But once you see enough, you stop asking who you used to be. You start doing what needs to be done. Daniel had become predictable. Late meetings. Same nights. Same excuses. So when he told me he'd be working late that Thursday, I didn't question it. I nodded, smiled, and waited. Then I followed. The restaurant wasn't hidden. That surprised me. No back alley. No quiet corner. It was open. Visible. The kind of place people went to be seen. Like they weren't even trying to hide. Or worse, like they didn't think they needed to. I parked across the street and stayed in the car. Watched. Waited. And then I saw her. Lauren. She wasn't what I expected. Not younger. Not louder. Not the kind of woman who demanded attention. She didn't need to. She had a kind of presence that made people pay attention without trying. Composed, confident, certain, and Daniel, he looked different with her. Lighter, more engaged. Like he was exactly where he wanted to be. That realization didn't hit me the way I thought it would. It didn't break me. It clarified something. He wasn't lost. He wasn't confused. He was choosing. But then I noticed something else. Something that didn't fit. They weren't acting like people caught in an affair. There was no tension. No nervous energy. No urgency. Instead, they were focused. Lauren pulled a folder out of her bag. Daniel leaned in. They went through documents together, page by page, talking quietly, pointing at sections, making notes, like partners, not just in something personal, but something structured, something intentional. That's when it shifted. This wasn't just betrayal. This was alignment. They weren't just seeing each other. They were working together. And whatever they were working on, it involved more than feelings. I stayed until they left, kept my distance, watched which direction she went. And when she walked into a glass building downtown, I followed far enough to see the name on the directory. Lauren Hayes, senior partner, corporate law. The words settled heavily in my chest. Mergers, acquisitions, asset restructuring. Everything suddenly connected. The emails, the financial transfers, the secrecy. This wasn't random. This was professional. This was planned. Daniel wasn't just cheating on me. He was building something with her. Something that required precision, legal protection, a strategy. That line from the email came back to me. We'll finalize it before she has any idea. Before she... Not if... Before... That meant there was an end point. A moment where everything would be completed. And I would be the last to know. Sitting in my car, watching the lights inside that building dim one by one, I realized something I hadn't expected. I didn't hate her. Not really. Lauren wasn't pretending to be anything she wasn't. She wasn't the one sitting across from me at dinner. She wasn't the one sharing a home with me. Daniel was... He was the one who made promises, who built a life with me, and then chose to build something else in secret. Something that didn't include me. As I walked past the building on my way back to the car, I slowed near the entrance. 2 men stood inside, talking. One of them mentioned her name. Hayes is handling the Carter restructuring personally, he said. Restructuring. The word hit harder than anything else. Because restructuring doesn't just change numbers. It changes ownership, control, power. I didn't stay to hear the rest. I didn't need to. I drove home that night with a clarity I hadn't felt before. This wasn't about saving my marriage. That question had already been answered. This was about understanding what they were doing. And why. Because if Daniel and his family were restructuring something, and if Lauren was the one leading it, then there was only one question left. Where did I fit into their plan? The answer came faster than I expected. I didn't. Not as a partner. Not as a wife. Not as anything that mattered. I wasn't part of the plan. I was the problem. And once you realize you're the problem, you stop waiting to be included and start preparing for what happens when they try to remove you. There's a moment when suspicion stops feeling like doubt and starts feeling like certainty. Not loud, not dramatic, just sharp enough that you can't ignore it anymore. That's where I was now, sitting in the quiet of my living room. Daniel's voice drifting faintly from the other side of the house as he took another late work call. And for the first time, I wasn't wondering if he was lying. I was wondering how much had already been done without me. That night, after he fell asleep, I opened the laptop again. Not his email. The files, the documents I had seen referenced but hadn't fully explored. Because some part of me had known, once I saw everything clearly, there would be no turning back. I logged in, found the folder, and opened the first file. Asset Restructuring Proposal, Carter Holdings. Even the title felt distant. Clinical, like it had nothing to do with me. Like my life wasn't about to be reduced to lines of text and numbers on a page. At first, it looked like everything else Daniel had always handled. Ownership percentages, board adjustments, tax language I didn't fully understand. The kind of things I had trusted him with without question. But then I saw it. A clause. Small. Easy to miss. Buried halfway through the document. Spousal interest to be reclassified and dissolved under revised partnership terms. I read it once. Then again. Slower. Spousal interest. That was me. Reclassified. Dissolved. Removed. My fingers tightened slightly on the edge of the laptop. Not from panic. From focus. I scrolled down. Toward the signature line. And that's when everything stopped. My name was there. Typed neatly. Exactly where it should be. Evelyn Carter. And next to it, a signature. My signature, or something close enough that anyone else would believe it. But I knew better. I knew the way my hand moved. The way I wrote certain letters. This wasn't mine. It was practiced. Copied. Forged. A cold, steady realization settled over me. This wasn't just betrayal. This was fraud. And fraud doesn't happen by accident. It requires time, planning, coordination. Which meant one thing. This had been happening for a while. I opened the next document. Amended prenuptial agreement. My stomach tightened. Daniel and I had signed a prenup before we got married. I remembered that. Back when everything felt transparent. Back when I trusted him and his family. I had never questioned it. Never thought I needed to. Until now. Because this version was different. The structure had shifted. Clauses had been added. Language had changed in ways that were subtle, but significant. Ownership redirected. Protection reduced. My position weakened. Quietly. Legally. I scrolled further, looking for something that would tell me when this had happened. And then I saw the date. Recent. Not years ago. Not before our marriage. Weeks ago. While I was still sitting across from him at dinner. While I was still asking about his day. While I still believed we were on the same side. They were rewriting everything. Without me. I leaned back slowly. The room around me suddenly too quiet. Because now it all made sense. The distance. The secrecy. Lauren. She wasn't just someone he was seeing. She was the one making sure this worked. The one shaping it. Structuring it. Making it legal. Making it permanent. And Daniel, he wasn't confused. He wasn't lost. He was part of it. Every step of the way. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not dramatically. Not in a rush. Just a quiet conversation. I didn't give every detail at first. Just enough. Enough for him to understand the situation. When I mentioned the clause, the reclassification of spousal interest, there was a pause on the line. A long one. Then his voice came back. Measured and careful. If what you're describing is accurate, this wasn't done in good faith. Not in good faith. A simple phrase. But it carried weight. Because it meant something important. It meant what they had done wasn't as secure as they thought. I ended the call and sat there for a moment, letting everything settle. They weren't just planning to leave me. They were planning to erase me. Financially. Legally. Completely. And they thought I wouldn't notice until it was too late. That I would sign whatever was put in front of me. Walk away quietly. Accept whatever was left. That was their mistake. Because in that moment, something shifted again. Not emotionally. Strategically. I closed the laptop and looked around the house. The furniture. The walls. The life we had built. And for the first time, it didn't feel like something I might lose. It felt like something they were trying to take. And that changed everything. They thought I didn't know. They thought I was still the woman who trusted without question. The one who would be caught off guard. The one who would lose? And for the first time since this began, I saw the advantage in that. Because the most dangerous place to be is underestimated. And I was going to make sure they kept underestimating me. Right up until the moment everything turned. There's a difference between knowing the truth and using it. Up until that point, I had been collecting pieces, watching, listening, putting things together in silence. But knowledge alone doesn't change anything. Action does. And the moment I understood they were planning to erase me was the moment I stopped being the woman reacting to betrayal and became the woman preparing for it. I didn't confront Daniel. I didn't change how I spoke to him. If anything, I became better at being exactly who they thought I was. Calm, unaware, trusting, because the version of me they believed in was my greatest advantage. Every morning, I made coffee, sat across from him, asked about his meetings, smiled at the right moments, and every time he walked out the door, I began my real work. The lawyer I chose wasn't the kind who made promises. He didn't dramatize anything I told him. He listened, carefully, quietly. And when I finally showed him everything, the financial transfers, the emails, the forged signature, the amended prenup, he didn't react right away. He studied it, page by page. Then he looked at me. "You're not just dealing with betrayal," he said. A pause. "This is exposure." The word stayed with me. Exposure. Because it meant something important. It meant they weren't as safe as they thought. It meant the structure they had built had weaknesses. He pointed to a section of the document, a detail I had read but hadn't fully understood. "If this was done without informed consent," he said, "it doesn't hold." Informed consent. Two simple words. But they changed everything. Because no matter how carefully they had planned, they had built it on a lie. And lies don't survive when they're brought into the light. From that point on, everything I did had a purpose. I documented everything. Dates, transfers, messages, patterns. I took copies of documents, saved backups of emails. Even the smallest detail mattered. Because it wasn't one piece of evidence that would matter in the end. It was the weight of all of it together. The truth, layered carefully until it couldn't be ignored. One afternoon, while going through another set of files, I found something unexpected. An earlier draft, less polished, less careful, more honest. And in that version, there was a line that didn't exist in the final document. Spousal notification waived due to strategic timing. I read it twice. Strategic timing. That was how they justified it. Not informing me, not including me, not giving me the chance to respond. It wasn't an oversight. It was a decision. That sentence alone said more than anything else. It proved intent. It proved planning. It proved that I had never been meant to know. The more I uncovered, the clearer Lauren's role became. She wasn't just involved. She was leading. Her name appeared everywhere. Not as support, not as an assistant, but as the one directing the legal structure, the one shaping the outcome, which meant Daniel wasn't being manipulated. He was choosing to follow her, trust her, work with her, in ways he no longer did with me. And strangely, that didn't break me. It steadied me. Because it removed the last illusion. There was no confusion, no misunderstanding, just decisions. Clear, intentional decisions. My lawyer found something else a few days later. Something Daniel hadn't thought through. If everything moved forward the way they planned, and if it was challenged, Daniel wouldn't walk away untouched. He could be held responsible, personally, for misrepresentation, for fraudulent documentation, for financial misconduct. The plan they thought would protect him could destroy him. That's when I felt it. Not anger, not revenge, something quieter, stronger. Control. Because for the first time since this started, I wasn't behind. I was ahead, seeing the outcome before it happened, understanding the risks before they did, and choosing when to act. We didn't rush. That was the most important part. Timing mattered more than anything. Let them finish. My lawyer said, let them believe it's done, because the truth hits harder when no one is expecting it. We identified the moment quickly. A formal dinner. The announcement of the restructuring. Family, investors, legal representatives, everyone in one room. That was where it would happen. Not before, not after, right in the middle of what they thought was their success. A few days later, Daniel mentioned it casually. "Big dinner next week," he said. "Important for the company." I looked at him, keeping my expression soft. Should I come? There was a pause. Brief. Almost invisible. Then he smiled. Of course. Of course. Like it had always been part of the plan. Like I hadn't been excluded from everything leading up to it. That pause told me everything. They weren't expecting resistance. They weren't preparing for exposure. They believed they were in control. That night, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. Not adjusting anything. Not fixing anything. Just looking at the woman staring back at me. She didn't look broken. She didn't look lost. She looked focused. Composed. Ready? Because somewhere along the way, I had stopped being the woman waiting for the truth and become the woman holding it. And the most dangerous part of all? They still thought I knew nothing. They still believed I would be the one caught off guard. And I was going to let them keep believing that, right up until the moment everything collapsed. Because revenge isn't loud, it's precise. And my timing was almost perfect. The night they thought everything would finally fall into place was the night it all began to fall apart. The Carter estate was glowing when I arrived. Every light perfectly placed. Every detail controlled. From the outside, it looked like success. Stability. Power. From the inside, I knew better. I stepped out of the car slowly, smoothing my dress. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to feel the moment settle into my body. This was it. Not the moment I discovered the truth. The moment I used it. Inside, the room was already full. Soft music drifted through the air. Conversations blended into a low, confident hum. Crystal glasses caught the light as people moved with quiet ease, like they were exactly where they were supposed to be. Daniel stood near the center, speaking with two investors. His posture relaxed, his expression effortless. He looked like the man I married, or at least, the version of him I used to believe in. Lauren stood across the room, composed, controlled, speaking with Patricia as if she had always belonged there. And maybe in their version of things, she did. Daniel noticed me and smiled, excusing himself as he walked over. He kissed my cheek lightly. "I'm glad you made it," he said. I met his eyes. I wouldn't miss it. For a second, something flickered in his expression. Too quick to name. Then it was gone. Patricia approached next. Her presence as polished as ever. "Evelyn, you look beautiful," she said. Her tone warm, measured. I smiled. "Thank you." This time, I understood exactly what it was. Not kindness. Containment. Dinner began without delay. Courses were served. Conversations flowed. Laughter rose and fell in all the right places. And slowly, almost naturally, attention shifted toward Daniel. He stood, glass in hand. The room quieted. "This is an important moment for our family and our company," he began. His voice was steady, confident, practiced. He spoke about growth, about legacy, about the future. All the right words, all the expected phrases. And as I listened, I realized something. He believed this. He believed he had succeeded. That everything he had done, everything he had hidden, had led him here. That he had won. A folder was passed around the table. Copies of the finalized agreement. I watched as it moved from hand to hand until one was placed in front of me. I looked down at it, ran my fingers lightly across the page. For a moment, I let myself imagine what would have happened if I had never looked deeper. If I had trusted one more time. If I had signed without reading. That version of me would have lost everything. Daniel finished speaking. Applause filled the room. Glasses lifted. The moment they had been building toward our... And that's when I stood. Not abruptly. Not dramatically. Just enough. Before we celebrate, I said, my voice calm, steady. There's something we should clarify. The shift in the room was immediate, subtle but undeniable. Daniel turned toward me, confusion breaking through his composure. Evelyn. I held his gaze. Just a few details. I placed my folder on the table. The one they hadn't prepared for. I opened it slowly, deliberately. Inside were copies of everything. The financial transfers, the emails, the earlier draft, and the document with the forged signature, placed beside my real one. Side by side. Impossible to ignore. This version, I said, turning the page slightly so others could see, was never signed by me. Silence settled over the table. Heavy. Unavoidable. And this clause, I continued, pointing to the line they thought I would never notice, was written under the assumption that I wouldn't know. I let that sit. Let it move through the room. Then I looked around. At the investors. At the lawyers. At least now, I said quietly. Everyone does. Patricia's expression changed first. Not shock. Recognition. Then calculation. Lauren didn't speak, but her posture tightened, her focus sharpening in a way that told me she understood exactly what this meant. Daniel didn't move. Didn't speak. He just stared at the documents like they had appeared out of nowhere. Like this wasn't supposed to happen. I reached into my folder again, pulled out one last document. This, I said, placing it carefully on the table, is the original ownership structure. I slid it forward. Before any amendments. A pause. Then I looked directly at Daniel. And if you read it closely, you'll notice something you missed. I didn't explain it. I let him find it. Watched as his eyes moved across the page. Watched as the realization hit. Because while they were busy restructuring everything, they overlooked one detail. One that had been there all along. The controlling interest was never his to reassign. It had been placed in my name. Protected. Quietly. Legally. From the very beginning. The room changed. You could feel it. Like something invisible had shifted out of place. Investors leaned forward. Lawyers exchanged glances. The certainty that had filled the room minutes ago was gone. And Daniel, for the first time in a long time, looked at me without control. Without confidence. Without certainty. Just unsure. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse him. I didn't need to, because truth doesn't need volume. It just needs the right moment. And this was mine. I closed the folder gently, stepped back, and let the silence do the rest. Because in that moment, they understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. This was exposure. Complete. Final. And the story they thought they had written no longer belonged to them. Silence doesn't end when the truth comes out. It changes. It settles into the room in a way that feels heavier, sharper, impossible to ignore. That night, after everything unraveled, no one knew what to say. Not Daniel. Not Patricia. Not even Lauren. Because there are moments when words stop being useful. And this was one of them. I stood there for a few seconds longer than necessary, watching the shift ripple through the room. The confidence that had filled it earlier was gone, replaced by something quieter. Uncertainty. Recognition. The beginning of consequence. Evelyn, Daniel finally said. Just my name. Nothing after it. No explanation. No excuse. No version of the truth he could reshape into something acceptable. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to understand him. I wasn't trying to make sense of his choices or find a reason that would soften what he had done. There was nothing left to understand. You should stop, I said calmly. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Because whatever he was about to say wouldn't change anything. Lauren stepped forward then, her composure still intact, but thinner now. More controlled than confident. This doesn't have to escalate, she said. Her tone was measured, professional, Like she was still negotiating a situation she believed could be managed. For a moment, I almost admired that. Almost. But then I realized she still didn't understand what had happened. None of them did. This wasn't something that could be contained. It wasn't a problem to solve. It was a line that had already been crossed. And lines like that don't move back. My lawyer spoke next. His voice quiet but clear enough to redirect the entire room. "There will be no signing tonight," he said. "Any further action will require full disclosure." That was the moment everything officially stopped. No celebration. No agreement. No carefully constructed ending to the story they thought they were writing. Just silence. And accountability. I didn't stay for the rest of it. There was nothing left for me there. No conversation I needed to have. No argument worth finishing. Because closure doesn't come from other people. It comes from knowing you've said enough and done enough. As I walked toward the door, I could feel their eyes following me. Not with judgment. Not with pity. Something else. Something closer to respect. Or maybe just the realization that I wasn't who they thought I was anymore. Right before I stepped outside, I turned back. Daniel was still standing there, frozen in place. The room moving around him, voices beginning to rise again, tension shifting into quiet conversations. But he wasn't part of it anymore. For the first time, he looked like someone who had lost control of something he didn't know how to get back. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I saw it. The understanding, not just of what he had lost, but how, and why, and who had taken control of the story. He finally understood the smile. The one from the wine bar. The one he never saw. The one that wasn't about pretending everything was fine. It was about knowing something he didn't. I stepped outside. The night air cooler than I expected. The quiet of it wrapping around me like a clean break. Driving home, I replayed everything in my mind. The kiss. The message. "I love you." The words that used to mean something. The words that now felt empty. Not because they weren't real once, but because they had been used without truth. And truth is what gives words their weight. Without it, they're just sound. Just something people say when they think no one is paying attention. But I had been paying attention, even when I didn't want to. Even when it would have been easier not to. That was the difference. I didn't win because I exposed them. I didn't win because I proved them wrong. I won because I stopped ignoring what I already knew. Because I chose to see clearly. To wait. To understand. And then to act when it mattered most. Betrayal doesn't always end in chaos. Sometimes it ends in clarity. In quiet decisions. In moments where you choose yourself, without asking for permission. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the house didn't feel the same. Not empty. Not broken. Just different. Like something had shifted back into place. Not the life I thought I had, but something more honest. More grounded. More mine. I sat there for a moment before turning off the engine. My hands resting lightly on the wheel. The silence around me no longer heavy. Just still. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace with that. If you've ever been in a moment where something felt off, but you couldn't prove it yet, I want to ask you something. Would you have confronted him right away? Or would you have waited, like I did? Tell me in the comments. I read every story, every perspective, and I know there are so many different ways people handle betrayal like this. And if this kind of story about hidden truth, quiet strength, and taking your power back resonates with you, stay with me. There's more to come. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Because sometimes the quietest revenge is the one that changes everything.